Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we have on Nathan Thornberry again. How are you, Nathan?
Awesome. How are you, Ian?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. I really do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know you're a busy guy. You have multiple ventures going on out there. So to take your time out and be on the show with us, I do appreciate it. And anybody who's listening, if you hear a cough or me pass out in the middle of the show, I have a cold, I assume. So we'll see how it goes on my end. But Nathan, before we get going, I got to tell you, I actually read one of your books. I want to say like 16, 17 years ago. It wasn't far into my career. I was probably 2 or 3 years in, and I read one of your books about when you talked about how you grew up in the inspection industry, like your parents own an inspection company over in Indiana, I believe, right?
Yes, they do. They still do. They own it to this day.
Yeah, yeah. So you kind of grew up in the industry, and I remember something weird that always stuck out to me when I was reading your book was you sold your first house, like you flipped a house when you were still in high school.
Yeah, I did.
Is that true,
I
or
did.
did I
I didn't
remember? Yeah.
actually. I didn't sell it before I was done with high school. I bought. I bought a condo, a 2-bedroom condo, partway into my senior year. And before the end of my senior year, I had a house, and I rented out the condo. And then within 6 months or 8 months after graduating, I bought a second house. So I was up to 3 properties, and I had this crazy idea that I would buy like property after property, and that was my path to wealth. And then within 1 year of graduating high school, I got a letter from a personal injury attorney for the older lady that was renting that first condo because she slipped and fell, and they wanted to sue me for it. They wanted my insurance information. I told them to, to go pound
tread sand.
sand.
Yeah.
I didn't even hire a lawyer. I just sent a letter back to this lawyer. I said, prove it.
No. Well, so you have a long business history. Like I always thought like I was pretty cool, like right after high school, or well, my version of high school, I quit high school in the 9th grade-ish, so that's not even high school. But I'm like, okay, I started my first business. You're out there buying and selling houses, so you know a thing or two about business. You know a thing or two about the inspection industry. Not that I need to repeat this for most of our audience, but I will say, I've always liked you. I've always gotten along with you, but you do have a polarizing effect sometimes, and I like that for this podcast because I don't like to have everybody on who has the same opinions as me, and I like to hear all sides of every issue and every thought because I think it gives us a more complete image of what's actually going on. So today we're going to talk about 2 aspects of the home inspection industry, and these were brought up by you, and I thought they were great subjects: the state of real estate and its effect on inspections, and also the rapid transition away from single inspector firms. 2 things that we, if you listen to the show, we talk about quite extensively, and I really wanted to get your thoughts on that. So tell me, Nathan, what are your thoughts on the state of the real estate market as a whole and its effect on us as an industry?
Well, we have big problems in real estate right now, and I don't think I've heard anybody talk about it in these terms. A lot of people talk about, high interest rates, which has an obvious effect. Historically, they're not particularly high, but they're,
Right.
they're high for recent years, and what the market was used to, and that in itself has an effect of creating less inventory because I don't know about you, but I have some mortgages that are sub 3%. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's really a challenge to get me to let go of that. When I have other options, and other people feel the same. So, we see that lack of inventory, but then nobody talks about the other side of that, which is that in Q3, which is the latest we can really look at and see numbers and go, okay, here's what officially happened. We had a rental vacancy rate that was fairly low in the mid sixes, and we had a a total sales nationwide in the US that was down 21% year over year. And yet we still had an increase in inventory. We were up to almost 3.5 months of inventory in this country, even though people aren't selling their homes, even though the inventory is down, we still had 3.5 months worth of inventory. And that was a huge increase. Now, some states were down below 2 months worth of inventory, and that's good, but the volume still sucked. And, so overall, we're looking at inspection volume that is down, probably over 5% right now, and an inspection industry that is bloated by about 7% net. That's net, probably 11% new inspectors and 4% gone for a net 7. So that's shaping up to be a difficulty for a lot of inspectors, particularly those that that didn't build their businesses way big. And this is where, if you're not a multi-inspector firm and you're doing this as a hobby, great. But if you're a multi-inspector firm, then you get to do this really magical thing in the down market. You get to let people go. You can reduce your inventory very easily. Now, of course, there's a downside. They can become competitors, but usually they're not as good at marketing and running a business as you are.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that going on. And it is kind of sad to see, but it's also, unfortunately, a business decision. One of the largest inspection firms in the country, I was just talking to a couple of guys that actually got laid off by that company, starting their own inspection businesses, and they were talking about how many people got let go. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, that's quite a bit. But it's the whole addition by subtraction. The way you make your numbers balance at the end of the year is the easiest way, unfortunately, is to let people go. And it's harder to do when you're a smaller multi-inspector firm. Like if you have 5 guys and you let 2 guys go, I mean, that's hard to make up. That's hard to, you've just lost 40% of your staff. And now if you're 20, 30, 50 inspectors, 100 inspectors, you lay off 10 guys and it's only 10%, and you can kind of fill in a little bit easier. But yeah, I do see a lot of the same things.
But that's only perception. By scale, it's the same thing. If you need to lose 40% of your staff in order to not lose money in your business and be healthy for the next phase, then find the bottom 40% and fire them immediately. Don't wait. They'll find other things to do in their lives.
Yeah, I guess that's a hard thing for me, and I probably have too much emotion put in it. But it bothers me to see that. But at the same time, it's a business decision, unfortunately.
Well, but look at what's going on right now in the market beyond home inspection. We have record sales, and we have over 75%. Over 75% of the S&P has already reported during this earnings season. Over 3/4 of them beat expectations, wild growth, and yet the theme on Wall Street right now is who's letting some people go. And even the Magnificent Seven, as they call them, are laying people off. People are getting more selective about employees, and that's actually where we get into the cure for inflation. It's not charge more interest to people, make their rates go up, make it so they have to make more in order to buy things, and just become a snowball compounding of inflation, but rather to actually reduce the amount of income earners. Our employment rates are too high, and so we're fixing that, and eventually it comes out in the wash. Do your part. If you have somebody that's working for you that is not productive, don't be behind this curve. Let them go.
It is kind of funny thinking about interest rates, and we watch that so heavily. It's one of the main things that we watch, but it's really just an old trope. It's a really reductive method to try to regulate the economy as a whole. Raise interest rates and slow things down, lower them, speed things up, when it's so much more complex than that. But it does have an effect. Like you were just talking about, you have sub 3% mortgages out there. I was just talking to my accountant about a property that I have that's at like 3.3%. And I'm like, why would I ever sell this or pay it off? every year that I pay a little bit more, I pay them with money that's worth less because of inflation. I'm making money off of that mortgage because now I have that money free
Oh,
to do other things.
you
So
know, we're trying very hard to reduce inflation, where we were never in hyperinflation mode, and the levels of inflation at 3.5 or even 5% are actually not such a bad thing. They really do reduce debt for people. It's the great debt eliminator, and if you're of high net worth, or you have money in the market, you should have some debt too, because debt is the best way to hedge against inflation.
yeah, it's true. So now, thinking back to the home inspection market, I had a thought, and I wondered what you thought about this. Home inspection prices kind of crawl up very slowly, and we keep losing work quarter over quarter, at least by my anecdotal measurements of things.
Mhm.
If you have this low inventory, this number of inspections hypothetically will get skipped and all that other stuff. And I've seen a large percentage of home inspection companies go into quote unquote forced retirement,
Mhm.
or just go out of the business or never make it. But at the same token, I see, so like a house in some areas used to be $200,000 on average in some areas, and now the average is about $400,000. So an agent walks in and does half as many houses but makes the same amount of money, or sells the same number of houses and makes double the money. Appraisers still have to get out there, and even though it's is down, do you think home inspectors are getting the brunt of the problems in the market, or do you think we're just kind of the most whiny about it?
The biggest problem is that it's so easy to become a home inspector, and the barrier to entry is nothing. The qualifications are very, very low, and when we have a down market, especially in the trades, you look at nationwide quarter 3, we were down over 13% in permits for single family residential. That's an awful lot of people that are in, on that level of the trades, that then, you know, switch over to the repair level and the service level. And then that becomes overpopulated. And then now we have, more people in home inspection than ever, which accounts for the boom in home inspectors lately. Well, that you got home inspectors would like to think that they're exempt from supply and demand, but they are not even close. So, they just end up kind of eating each other alive. And the smart ones do things like getting into environmental testing. There's a reason we're, investing in that so rapidly here, at Breeze and Priority Lab, because that's where the money's to be made. If you're not testing for mold and asbestos and radon and water test, then you're missing out on the revenue. You're going to do less inspections. You're going to do them for less money than you'd want to. That's a fact of life. You can't change it. Everybody that you hear that says, "Oh, I'm so valuable, and I don't leave the house for less than $900 or whatever it is," um, they don't leave their house very often. Don't look at them and go, "Oh, that guy's successful. He's confident." No, he's an idiot. Um, you are not exempt from supply and demand. You just have to make up for it in other ways. Do it like real businesses. What does McDonald's do when they run out of um, runway? They add coffee. Like they add a whole coffee bar, and they go to compete with Starbucks, or they add a fish sandwich. Inspectors need to do the same thing, and if you're not doing that, you're missing out.
So that analogy really speaks to me, because that's very true. We need to build our own runway or get on somebody else's runway that's already there. So commercial inspections, if we're a home inspector and we're good at what we do, we should be able to transition into commercial inspections. We've talked about that a lot this season. Environmental testing, 100%. I've always said anyways, even when there wasn't a lot of bloat in the home inspection industry, and I say bloat, like there's just a lot of home inspectors and not a lot of work comparatively, but even
Hmm.
then, ancillary inspections are where we made our money. People hate it when I say this,
Right.
but I've often viewed the home inspection business-wise, just number-wise, as the loss leader almost. That gets me on site. That covers all of my expenses. and I make a little bit of money, but where I make my money is septic inspections, sewer scopes, all the additional stuff that people need, and that's what makes my business.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely. And this relates very directly to the other topic of the day, which is that, that transition to multi-inspector firms, and, how we're transitioning to the future of home inspection, and why we're not transitioning as fast as we should be.
okay,
This is the holy grail of home inspection, right? So we see it. We know there's a lot more multi-inspector firms. There's a lot of people that are bringing real business know-how, and they're eating everybody else's lunch. But they still get affected when the market turns like this, because the barrier to entry is so low, and if they lay people off, they just become competition. That is not the case at UPS and FedEx, right? That's the case in home inspection, because we don't really have anything proprietary at these multi-inspector firms. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. For those of you that don't know, we invest in a lot of different businesses here at my company. And one of them is a business that we are not very proprietary at all, admittedly. We have good flavors and whatnot, but that's hard to describe in marketing. At Blue Moon Hemp, we sell a lot of drugs. That's right. But what makes us better than the other guys? Why are we one of the biggest in the industry and in under 10 months in the biz? Well, because we deliver, and most of our competition are a bunch of hippies that don't know how to run a business. So when after a store gets shipments consistently from us, they tend to buy again. So if you're delivering well for your client, you're going to be above that that median line. But there's still something missing from this industry, and it's that proprietary aspect that can't just come from size like UPS and FedEx does. It has to come from something different, something that your competitors with $10,000 to invest in a little bit of time can't keep up with. And there's not too many things out there I've seen that really accomplish that. At least it hasn't happened yet. There's room for an innovation in this industry, and it definitely doesn't have to do with with making a home maintenance online digital binder or whatever. There's something else missing, and I don't know what it is, but we'll figure it out. It's probably going to be something along the lines of a machine that you can't replicate for less than $25,000 or $50,000 that ends up being utilized in the inspection process. As soon as someone does that and it has a meaningful result for the client, good night. It'll be only for the people that can finance that or have the wherewithal to spend that kind of money.
yeah, and I guess just to kind of take an opposing view of that, I think about you used FedEx and UPS as an example. There's nothing proprietary that somebody with a van and a driver's license can't get into. He can start a courier service.
Correct.
What makes them great is their size, and it gives everybody a warm fuzzy
Yes.
feeling. I don't use a white van courier service because I'm like, who is this dude? Like I'm going to use
Right.
FedEx because they pick it up from my house and I feel warm and fuzzy. Even McDonald's, you use that illustration. There's nothing proprietary about a burger and some coffee. I can go to Burger King and get basically the same thing. Maybe not everybody's preference. But with home inspections, I personally see no innovation that could come that can make it different that hasn't been already tried. So the 3D home model with like Matterport, guys have said, oh, well, I'm going to break into the high-end market. Sellers didn't really like the whole Matterport walkthrough, and it took you, 7 hours to do it on this 6,000 square foot house. And everybody's like, what are you doing here, dude? Or, just even the reporting, ways of reporting, ancillary services. There's not much that you can't get into. Like even for a while, we were the only ones who did septic inspections in our market, and that made us very novel. But then give it 3, 4,
Right.
5 years, and then everybody else is doing septic inspections.
Well, let me give you a potential, because you're right. You can use the local guy to be a courier, but you have a trust issue. Well,
Mm-hmm.
inspectors would like to think that they overcome the trust issue and some of their competitors don't, but it's just simply not true. There's no
Yeah.
real difference between inspectors in the initial marketing. In a long-term relationship, sure, but that takes time and money and effort. With UPS and FedEx, it's just that scale. All they needed was scale to be proprietary. And now, you and I could wake up tomorrow, find $100 billion in a bag in our living room, and we could not compete with UPS and FedEx, right? Just couldn't do it. They're too big. They're too massive. It would be like competing with Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines or with McDonald's or Coca-Cola. You can't do it. And we don't have that in home inspection. But let me give you an idea or an example of something that could be an innovation and proprietary. And let's just say it's a $50,000 machine that goes into your sewer line and actually like cleans it out, makes it all new, and inspects it, and and coats it in something or whatever, something along those lines where we're delivering something to the real estate transaction that's an undeniable value. Because right now, what do we really deliver to the real estate transaction? Finding the $20,000 issue, very seldom, very, very seldom. Finding $2,000 worth of issues, often, that get negotiated to 1,000 or 2,000 bucks maybe, and we're doing that in exchange for $500. So there's our price problem. It's not just supply and demand, it's the results. And real estate agents and buyers aren't so stupid that by the time they've done it 3 or 4 times, they don't know what the result's likely to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not willing to pay, in elastically, a huge amount of money for something that has a minimal return. The number of people that have been saved from a $20,000 or $50,000 issue that nobody would have noticed without the home inspector being there. That's a pretty rare group.
Yeah, I mean it does happen. I mean it happens for us usually because you go the extra mile or you're adding an additional service. You find the $20,000 sewer drain issue because you have equipment for that and you find it, going back to your ancillary point. But I do agree that part of it is, and I may get a couple of pitchforks on this, it is too easy to enter the industry. And I'll give an
Totally.
example. In New York, we actually passed a law in New York saying that you needed to pass the national inspection exam. You had to pass that to become a home inspector. They actually got the law reverted so that you can pass either that or the New York State one, which was a stupid sentence because the New York State one is like 100 questions that if you just close your eyes and start circling things, you can basically pass. It's not a test of somebody's competency. So what we actually do is instead of finding out if somebody can actually perform a task, is we shove them in there, watch them perform the task. If they get caught in the equipment and die, then you shove the next guy in there. And it's just
Right.
not a really effective way. We don't do that with any other industry. We don't stick a doctor in surgery after taking a test and say, hey, figure this out. This is life affecting. We don't do that with a plumber. You don't say, hey, start fixing these pipes and see if you can fix it. We let
Right.
them prove it in other ways and then work up to it. So I've never agreed with, as a whole, how we go about it in the industry. I liked it before licensing. My uncle was a surveyor and he would do home inspections, although he never liked that word. He's like, I'm not doing home inspections, I'm doing an as-built or whatever he would call it at the time. But he had to be really, really good because there was no licensing.
Yeah.
So you had to be awesome at your job so that people are like, you got to hire this guy. Now it's like somebody gets his license and they say, hey, look, I have the same qualifications as this guy. And you know what? They do.
Mm-hmm.
Guy entering the field right now gets his license. He has a license. I have a license. What's the difference between him and me in the eyes of the consumer? It's really
Right. Well, so here's the good news is that for those that have been around a while and you have your referral sources or you have a bigger company and you're able to, flexibly change the size of your company to the market, you make it through and hopefully we keep, excelling. If as an industry, we don't see that massive innovation all at once, at least we can see little ones along the way that add up to a lot. So as you're adding features into your business, think about how much they cost and what the permanence of them is. So let me give you just an example of something very selfishly that exists in the market today. If you are testing for radon, which happens in roughly half of the country pretty frequently, and you utilize the Breeze radon monitor, we're pushing out predictive radon test results in under 10 hours a lot of the time. And that's having the net effect in some markets of agents going to their guy and going, well, why am I waiting 48 hours for a test result from you when this guy's doing that? And then that guy has to look into it, has to find us, finds me appalling online or whatever, and so he doesn't want to buy anything, or he's some part-time entry-level guy that can't afford a Breeze radon monitor, even though long-term it costs half as much as any monitor out there, but he can't sign a contract for the long term. And so the bigger and even smaller but more established companies, the ones that listen to this and know who I am and know who you are, those guys win just by having these features and being able to commit to those features, because there's ongoing cost to these things. Whereas if you're a new guy and you just get a couple of radon canisters or outsource, nothing proprietary about that, right? So we need to, in everything you do, you need to be asking about the features and going, okay, is this feature great for the client? Does it have a high return on investment? And certainly fast radon results do. But also, does it cost enough? Like, what's the most expensive way to do it with the most features that are different to the client that dissuade your entry level competitors from just going into the business and going at it alone? They should be working for you, but have you given them a reason why your business is different than them just going into business? And most people don't. Even the franchises fall flat on their face very often when they say, oh, we have all these systems. By the way, they're the same systems that are on every home inspection company's radar.
Yeah, we actually had a podcast on basically how to sell yourself over the same person who has the same exact selling points. Because that's really what it comes down to in the market right now. Who sells the same exact selling points? It was funny because we were working on a couple of websites for a couple of different guys, and all of them sent us their bios and what services they offer and what sets them apart. We usually ask those things. And at one point, one of my people goes, oh, which one is this one? I'm like, I don't know. Let me look. And they all said basically the same exact thing. And I'm like, I don't know. It comes down to who can sell the same thing the most, or the best rather. So I have construction experience. I use modern inspection software. I do this, I do that, and I use infrared, but so does everybody else. It comes down to who sells it better. But I do agree with you. We do need something to basically knock that guy out of our market that we're trying to compete with, saying he can't do this. Not that I do this and he doesn't, because then he can always just change that. Actually, I had a thought as you were talking too. With our changing industry, interestingly enough, the CEO of one of the major inspection companies that kind of buying up a lot of inspection companies across the country called me and just wanted to chat, because he knows my opinion on that. I'm not a huge fan of that. But I don't see companies like Inspectify, and he was a really great guy. I'm not saying from either of these companies, Inspectify or Launchpad, and there's a couple others out there that buy up all these small inspection companies, or smaller, 5 to 10 guys, and then they reach out into multiple markets that way. They don't seem to be doing that well overall. So they have the size, a UPS kind of model that they're going after. Why is that not working for them? Is it because they don't have a unique selling point?
Well, they haven't figured out a way to make it appear to be something that you should do. Like it is definitely perceptive to both you and I that if we want, a quick bite, cheap, and to get in and out of there and not be inconvenienced and not be food poisoned, that it's really easy to spend 60 seconds in the drive-through line at McDonald's. But if you look at these companies, even the big ones that are in multiple markets, what is the what's the thing that naturally makes everybody in that market want to go with them? Not much. The thing that
Right.
makes them appealing is that they're consistent and they answer their phones and their marketing's good, and they take advantage of every feature that they can. And if you're talking about who I think you're talking about, they use all of our stuff, and you know they do the best they can to be ahead of the curve. Some of them have been uh, investing in some technology, which was a great thing to do a long time ago. I'm not sure that today, technology has the same effect as it once did. I think it's still
Hmm.
good to come up with a proprietary thing, but I think if you're a large company in home inspection and you're creating something proprietary, which is really just built on a box of somebody else's, right? A SQL backend or a FileMaker database or something along those lines. Don't build it with the idea that you're going to sell it to a lot of people. That used to be the thing. Inspectors would go out, they'd spend 100 grand on their system, and then they'd sell it to their buddies. But that ship sailed. It's too easy to make some software these days.
So let me ask you then. We talked about the effect that real estate has on the inspection industry, and it is still not a great market for the home inspection industry. I think we're out of the nosedive personally. Last year was a huge nosedive. I think we're on the pull up part of it, of the curve, personally. I don't know if you agree with that, but what do you think is going to happen this next year? And what do you think needs to happen is a better question.
Well, the number one thing that could happen that would change everything would be foreclosures going up.
Hmm.
That's a major stick in the mud on real estate right now, because at least when we you go down over 20% in real estate sales in Q3 of 2023. Sound familiar? It sounds almost precisely like '08.
Hmm.
The difference was in '08 that there was a lot happening in terms of repos. And then that
Hmm.
creates an opportunity for people to go out and flip. And then, we get to criticize their flipping skills, of course, in our little inspection groups. But at least there is, someone taking ugly houses and turning them into something that is, good, affordable housing for somebody. It serves a purpose. Some people make some money in the process. Everything's honky dory. What happened in the COVID era is we basically said everybody lives in a homestead state. Suddenly, we just let them keep their houses. And
Hmm.
you look at the foreclosure rate in Q3 of 2023. It was like 0.5%.
Yeah.
That's nuts. There's no way that it should be 0.5% in that environment. And so we're artificially keeping inventory on the sidelines. Unleash that inventory and it's go time. As far as the interest rates are concerned, yeah, of course, it would be nice for interest rates to go down. But in order for them to go down, you have to take that with, the slightly larger, tougher to swallow pill of some sort of economic indicator that makes it so that Jerome Powell wants to reduce interest rates somewhat aggressively so that it would have the net effect on mortgage rates. And in order for that to happen, he has to be concerned for his physical safety. I mean, that's how far it has to go for him. It would
Hmm.
appear.
So, just rolling back, you said something about homestead state because I was hoping you would talk about basically foreclosures because I think that's a big thing that we're missing in the market. A homestead state, I'll let you explain that to the audience in case they don't know what a homestead state is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's only two of them, if I'm not mistaken:
Well,
Texas and
New
Florida.
York is one. New York is
New
one.
York is one too. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I didn't know that. So you caught me. You tripped me up. You're the first one in history.
No.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Uh,
Well, it depends on the circumstance. Most states are a homestead state in certain circumstances. Basically, it means you can't take somebody's primary home or their
Correct.
vehicle. Yeah.
And it looks like there's quite a few actually. But I think when I'm talking about homestead states, I'm talking about the ones where it's nearly impossible to take somebody's primary home. And
Yeah.
it's I believe it's most difficult in Florida and Texas. If
Yeah.
if New York is a homestead state as well, I hadn't heard about it because it must be a little bit easier to overcome it than Texas and Florida, I would imagine.
I think
Right.
mortgages may have certain exemptions because it does happen. It's not rare here, but it's also not very
And I have
common.
the list, and I figured out the mystery where I got that. So there are variations on the homestead protections.
Exactly.
There are a few states that are known to have the broadest. Florida and Texas are right at the top of the list. Then Iowa, South Dakota, Kansas, and Oklahoma. So New York isn't even on the top 5 or 6.
No.
And nobody cares about Oklahoma. Just
Well,
kidding. Oklahoma.
New York,
We love
New York tends to be more for civil action. It's a
Gotcha.
little bit easier, but I don't want to get too hung up on that because I wanted everybody to know what Nathan meant by homestead state, and
Sure.
it does kind of change the dynamics. Texas right now is one of the busier markets in the country. They're not hurting as much
Yes.
as certain other markets. Like, interestingly, I've seen a pretty big downturn in California. It's hard to keep track of because they don't, publish a lot of the stuff that other states do. But do you think that foreclosures is the only thing that we're waiting for? Because I wait for a down market overall, not a down real estate market, but a down market as a whole. When the U.S. is in recession, that's typically when I make the most gains in my business. And we've said that on the show before. It's a sad truth, but once the market's down, foreclosures go up, people tend to buy more but be more cautious, and then they tend to get a better inspection and more ancillaries and things like that. Do you think there's
Sure.
something else missing in the market? Because we don't want another year or two of basically getting kicked in the head with the market the way it is.
Well, California did a good job of replacing Miami and Scottsdale from last time around when it comes to real estate depreciation.
Mm-hmm.
You look at 2023 versus 2022, I think California Association of Realtors, which does put out some pretty substantial numbers to follow, they were
Okay.
tracking over a 7% decline in real estate values. So, California has been notably hurt. But, it goes back to 08, 09 when I was a big real estate vendor. I guess we still are, but when I was a bigger one, you walk into a bank and you tell them you're in real estate and they look for a window to throw you out of. And then you have to remind them, I'm paid by the transaction. It doesn't matter if their prices went up or down. We just need the transactions. And that's why the foreclosure issue is a big issue. And, we're letting people stay in their homes that aren't paying. And that's not healthy. It's not like people are going to, go homeless and die of starvation all of a sudden. We have lots of programs to help. But right now we're kind of giving away something that is a main economic vehicle, property. So that shouldn't be.
So I guess my main takeaway from our discussion so far is it sounds like foreclosures is probably one of the biggest markers that we're missing for a good or a better home inspection market, which I had that in my own equation, but maybe not as heavily as I do now after talking with you, because I was reading an article in Forbes about foreclosures recently. I'm like, man, you're right. There really isn't a lot of them out there, and we should have them, but we don't.
We totally should, and I think I know the one that you're talking about. I'm going to pull that up real quick. Um,
But while
but
you look,
yes, I agree.
yeah,
This is the number one thing by far.
interesting. So I was counting it
Yeah,
as like
here it is
number
from
5.
5 days ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
yeah. It was the one from 5 days ago. Yeah, I know the one that you're talking about. Yeah, they nailed it. And moreover, we have a bigger problem right now with real estate, which is that you don't have the number of transactions. You're way down in number of transactions. And yes, we're down in number of real estate agents, but we still have, way too many targets to hit for that marketing, even if selling is the thing that differentiates you from the other guy. Who do you sell to?
yeah.
And there's just nothing you can do about that other than here's your punchline, folks, in 39 minutes and 12 seconds, as to not go over the 40 minutes that Ian suggested you would stop watching, you ninnies. You have to be ahead of the market no matter what it is. And this market sucks. There's nothing you can do about that. So do whatever you have to do to get ahead. If we can help you in any way at discoverbreeze.com and prioritylab.com, we'll do it. We have several tools available, but you got to find it. You got to find the energy to make it through this, because we are coming out of it. There's no doubt about that. We always do. And you want to be very well situated when we do. Do not count on it happening on any particular day. Don't keep people around that are not valuable to you and your customers, and just do the best.
And we can go a couple minutes over here because I actually want to. That's a really great point that you brought out. So I want to just go back to one question though. What needs to happen, in your opinion, is foreclosures. Do you think that will happen in this next year, or anytime in the next couple of years? Because you said we're coming out of it. We always do. And that's what we say a lot, because that's when we do well, because half our competition's gone. Now the market's better and we're just grabbing work left and right. Do you think that will happen in the next year?
Unfortunately, there's no way to answer that without getting slightly political, which is one of my least favorite things to be.
Gotcha.
But you look at what we're doing from our executive branch right now, right? Lots of, hey, don't worry about paying those student loan bills at all. We'll just, we'll get rid of those. And these are the kind of things that are leading people to winning elections and leading people to being in positions of leadership. There is a much tougher path to, the grand old party suggesting personal responsibility and accountability when so many people are getting ingrained in that. And I think that there's a risk right now, especially if we continue on with the current administration, that people get very used to these policies of, yeah, don't worry about paying your mortgage or your student loan bill. Hell, don't even work. We'll send you a check. These things have a lasting effect, and they can go on for a while. But eventually it all comes home to roost. Eventually we have to get our productivity back up. It will be forced, regardless of which political party is in power when the day of reckoning comes. It gets forced. And when it gets forced, everything comes screaming back. So I'm not worried about it. It's a matter of timing. And, close your eyes, click your heels. You'll get back to Kansas.
Yeah, I think that last statement is the best. Basically, just close your eyes and it'll just happen. And we need to be ready for when it does happen, whether we're multi-inspector or single inspector. But I do agree with a lot of your points about the transitions that we're making in the market and what we need to do to stay out of it, or to stay above it, rather, ahead of it. Nathan, you're awesome to have on. Thank you so much. It was a great discussion. And there's some stats and some deeper stuff going on in here. But thank you for bringing it down a nice streamlined level for us and helping us to appreciate it a bit better.
Anytime. And thank you for doing this for home inspectors. You and got Preston Sandlin does a good job with it.
Yeah, he does.
The pair payments folks, they do a good job with this. I've seen a couple other personalities lately. Even Mike Crow's making a comeback. The amount of communication in this industry that happens every single day, even though Nick Gromiko's busy with great grandchild / child number 5 or whatever, is incredible.
We'll have to have, that was a fun episode with you and Nick. I had a ball. We'll have to have you guys both on again just to ramble. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we'll see you later.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Talk soon.